What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. A lot of things have happened recently with Alberta Prosperity Project, the whole legal battle that's ensuing, as well as Tom Lukaszik's wacko petition that's going on. Luckily today, we have the very formidable Jeffrey Rath joining us while he's on the road, and we are going to sit down with him, go over everything so that everybody has a clear understanding. Some people felt there was a bit of a blow yesterday when it came to how the judge handled things in the courtroom. Jeff has a different perspective, and we're going to get to that right here. Let's get to our interview and an update, I guess, on the situation with independence in Alberta from none other than Jeffrey Rath. Jeff, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic, Jeff. Let's talk about everything that's happening, because there's a little bit, we talked about last week's court proceedings on the channel. Some folks in the comments section had a tough time understanding the legal terms for everything, how everything was proceeding, where we've been, where we were at yesterday, and where we're headed. So maybe if you could just paint us a picture as to how this started, where we're at now, and where we're going in the future, maybe in crayon, like for somebody who doesn't understand the legal terms, so our audience
Yeah,
knows exactly what transpired yesterday and what we're looking forward to moving ahead.
sure. Well, first of all, it all started on July 4th of this year, Independence Day, when Mitch Sylvestre, Dennis Modry, and I went and filed Mitch's question for an independence referendum with Elections Alberta, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a provision in the Citizens Initiative Act that allows the electoral officer to refer a question to the court to determine whether the question offends sections 1 through 35 of the Constitution of Canada, right? The Constitution Act,
Yep.
1982, right?
Yep.
And of course, it doesn't say that he shall, right? It says he may. And of course, what we suspect is that they're looking for an excuse to delay what we're doing, right? Because they're concerned, about the fact that our question will lead to Alberta, being voted out of Canada. So the electoral officer, I think, to delay the process, has forwarded our question to the court for review. But of course, what nobody has explained to us yet, with regard to this so-called, allegation that the question could potentially offend sections 1 through 35 of the Constitution Act, is how is it possible for a question that at its core, seeks to amend the Constitution, right, could infringe anybody's constitutionally protected right? We think it's a strange application. Even the court, that we've been in front of, has admitted it's a strange application. And the court is literally, the other day was stretching to find ways in which somebody could even argue that our question offended, anybody's rights under the Constitution, as a question or as a process. I mean, ultimately, to the extent that Alberta leaving Canada would require an amendment to the Constitution, right? There's a potential for people's rights to change. But, from our perspective, everybody that's involved with the Alberta Prosperity Project and involved in the freedom movement and otherwise, I mean, we want people's constitutionally protected rights to be stronger after independence, not weaker, and that includes Indigenous people. So all these people that are fussing, well, an independent Alberta, could infringe our rights. Well, nobody knows that for a fact. It's a purely hypothetical argument, presupposing that an independent Alberta is going to become a fascist dictatorship worse than Canada, and that we're going to somehow, disregard people's rights in an independent Alberta. So even the court in its decision yesterday, and what was going on, so this question was referred to the court. We filed a motion or a cross motion to strike the question on the grounds that it's impossible for anybody to even suggest to the court that asking a question about, amending the Constitution could offend anybody's rights. We said the referral needed, to be struck. under Rule 368 of the Rules of Court on the basis that it had no reasonable chance of success, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what the court in essence said was that you only strike a motion, right, or only strike, a matter before the court where it's absolutely clear, plain, and obvious that the matter absolutely cannot succeed. And the court, in essence, made up some arguments for people and said because it could make up arguments that people might potentially make, that it wasn't going to strike our motion, or wasn't going to strike the reference, but instead we're going to have a hearing on it the 19th, 20th, and 21st of November, right? So the
Right.
court has not found that our question is unconstitutional. It's just left it for people to come in and try to convince the court that it could be. And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
we don't think they've got an iceberg's chance of hell of succeeding on that, and we're proceeding forward accordingly. But what your
Okay.
viewers, I think, go ahead.
No, I was just I'll
You
let
got a
you
question?
finish up there because my next question goes into Tommy's application, but you were saying something
Yeah,
about
no,
what the
no. Ask
viewers
that
need
question. Ask that
to
question.
focus on.
That's where I was going to go next. Anyway, go
Well,
ahead and ask the question.
it was more along the lines of so we all know about the judge's statement that Tommy's application was essentially a nothing burger, which
Right.
I mean, kudos to the judge on that one. But one of the things that I've heard rumbling around is that there's a potential that Tom's question isn't even a constitutional one. So even if and keep in mind, we've done the math. He needs to retain 3,300 signatures a day, which I think is still very difficult for him to attain. But we've been told that even if he were to garner those signatures and if they were verified and everything went through, it still would not possibly delay APP from having their question on a ballot because his is not a constitutional one. Is there any merit to that?
Yeah, that's what bothers me the most about what little Tommy Nothingburger is doing right now. Right? He's running around the province lying to people. Every time he gets in front of a camera, it's the old joke. It's like, how can you tell a politician's lying? Well, it's because his lips are moving, right? So he's running
Mm-hmm.
around telling everybody, and he's been saying this from day one, that his question, his stupid little Nothingburger question, should Alberta remain in Canada, is going to prevent the court, or can prevent the electoral officer from approving our question because it's the same question. Well, it's not the same question. Our question is legally binding and legally mandated under Section 1, Sub 3 of the Clarity Act, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, little Tommy's question is this little question that they made up that is completely legally, I mean, the judge said legally irrelevant nothing burger, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
legal equivalent of asking, should Alberta still be called Alberta, right? And it's not even a legislative proposal. Like, he's not proposing legislation to tie the hands of the government of Alberta, to prevent the government of Alberta legislatively from taking any steps. It's a policy question that has no legal consequence given how vague the question is.
Mm-hmm.
Remain in Alberta, Alberta's going to remain in Canada. Well, even if Alberta's independent, we're still bordered by Saskatchewan, Northwest Territories, and BC. So
Right.
geographically, we'd still remain in Canada, even though we would become an independent country, right?
Right.
So, his question doesn't comply with the Clarity Act. And of course, what the bozos did that put that question together, they were being too cute by half, right? So they didn't want to be in the same position that the Brexit people were in, where, even though everybody thought that they were, that the question wasn't going to succeed, at the end of the day, the question, the question resulted in the UK leaving the European Union, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
in this case, even if everybody voted no to Tommy's question, and this is how remain in Canada, no, it's not legally binding because it doesn't comply with the Clarity Act. So if everybody voted
Right.
no, it would still leave it open for or require Mitch Sylvestre or somebody else to come forward with a question that complies with the Clarity Act. You know, they did that very intentionally. In effect, that question is a scam. It's a phony question. It's a sham petition process that little Tommy and all of his left-wing friends are scamming people in Alberta, right? It could be used for identity theft. You know, it could be used to put people's names on, you know, NDP fundraising lists, Communist Party of Canada fundraising lists, you know, union fundraising lists, you know, whatever it is, right? They're getting all these people's names and, you know, names and contact information, you know, conning them into believing that what they're doing has some legal relevance when it doesn't one little bit. You know, so, you know, it's just kind of like little Tommy and his halal mortgages.
I think we lost Jeff there. Hold on, folks. One of the things we have to touch on while we're waiting on Jeff to come back, the guy's extremely busy. He's always driving around Alberta. Of course, APP doing all the legwork to make sure people are informed of essentially what this question entails, the reasons people should be voting again when we look at the value of freedom. Um, Jeff, Mitch, Dennis Modry, all the people who volunteer with APP have been doing such a fantastic job informing Albertans, even rural Albertans, as well as municipal, as to the steps necessary in order to gain independence. So it's important that this information gets out. You know, we completely lost Jeff there. We'll see if he gets back in. Now, yeah, it looks unfortunately there, folks, like we've lost Jeff Rath. Again, he's traveling the province. He's got a lot going on. So I've spoken with Jeff outside of the interview. Allow me to kind of summarize and wrap up essentially what has happened. Now, the court challenge is going, again, as Jeff mentioned, for individuals such as First Nations or anybody who feels wronged constitutionally to appear in court to argue why Alberta Prosperity Project's question is unconstitutional. Now, we've already seen with the judge talking about Tommy's petition that it's essentially a nothing burger. I think that we don't have to worry about interference yet, so to speak. Again, 3 days starting on the 19th of November, APP goes back to court, and they have been told, at least quoted by Jeff to me, that they should have an answer on the moving forward of their question by the end of the year. Now, while people state that they worry about, well, does that mean that there's going to be a delay to the question? Is the question not going to be able to get onto a 2026 referendum ballot? That's not necessarily true. Now, while Jeff gave his concerns as to what Tom Lukaszuk is potentially doing with people's information as collecting signatures to disperse and sell data to other providers within the liberal NDP parties and their fundraising organizations, Alberta Prosperity Project has said multiple times they're not using their lists. Keep in mind, if you head over to albertaprosperityproject.com, you can leave your information with the intent to sign once the question is approved, but they will not be selling that list for any data. It's nothing more than a collection of information so that once the question is approved, individuals can quickly sign up. And that is where APP has a leg up on Tom Lukaszuk's petition, that they already have their numbers required. So even if this small delay keeps the application from moving forward before the end of the year, APP would not need the allotted 120 days to garner their signatures. My guess is they could have it done within a matter of a couple of weeks, and then have everything verified. And of course, again, still get the question on a petition. So it's not over yet, folks. In fact, Jeff has reiterated to me that this was almost expected moving into yesterday's proceedings with the court date being set for November. They anticipated this, so it does not necessarily mean that things are in a bad position when it comes to Alberta independence. It does not mean that Tom Lukaszuk has defeated it. In fact, we can all sit back and have a laugh at what Tom's putting forward with his nothing burger petition. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Keep in mind, again, with Jeff's bad connection, we'll have him on the channel again in the near future to update us, to talk a little bit more in depth as to what we can expect and what's happening. But as I've always stated, folks, we wanted to keep you guys up to speed, up to date as to what's happening, everything independence. This is the unofficial official channel of information for the Alberta Prosperity Project. So make sure you come on back, hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet, leave a thumbs up and a comment down below. It helps push this out. Google, YouTube, the government, they're all pushing down against Alberta independence. They don't want people getting this information. So if you care about this province, if you care about its independence, hit a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. It helps push us out past the censorship algorithm to get the video out there for other people to see. Make sure to share it on social media. Join me here on the channel tonight for Friday Night Fringe, our weekly live streaming show, where I'll sit down with the beautiful Mrs. Fringe. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about other things that have happened in the country this week in politics, all while joined by the greatest YouTube community on the platform. I always look forward to chatting with you guys each and every week, hearing what you have to say. I most importantly look forward to chatting with you tonight and every Wednesday and Friday night, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here live on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this technologically difficult video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.